Mothers are our first love, they say. Stay tuned to know if this mother was the first love of her kids. Felicia, a very pretty woman, has a beautiful shape, height, and long hair. She had a lot of suitors coming to ask for her hand in marriage, but she refused to get married to anyone. She finally chose Mr. Fred, who is a driver. He has traveled to various places and is very wealthy. He owns different trucks in his name. After marriage, Felicia took in immediately and gave birth to a son. There was joy everywhere. People came to celebrate with her. She was so excited. Her husband, lavishly her with beautiful wrappers, killed a goat to welcome the arrival of his son. He was named Emmanuel. The family is living happily with everyone loving each other. Mr. Fred was still driving. At times he stayed out of his home for 1 month, but when he returns, he comes back with lots of gifts and bushmeat for his family. Felicia took in again and gave birth to a girl. She was named Stella. She's as pretty as her mother. Everyone admired her from birth. Everything was going well for the family, not until Mr. Fred brought a new wife named Becky home. Becky is beautiful and younger than Felicia. Mr. Fred gave more attention to his younger wife, though he bought equal gifts for them, but he spent 4 nights with Becky and 3 nights with Felicia. At times he snuck out of Felicia's room to spend the night with Becky. Felicia became jealous and started plotting evil plans in her heart in order to get rid of Becky. On the other hand, Becky wasn't someone to mess around with. She was ready to fight for her right. Felicia decided to become friends with Becky so that when Becky wasn't expecting, she would strike. But Becky didn't know, as she thought Felicia was a good person. Felicia's kids became close to Becky. They assisted her at times when she needed their help. One faithful day, it was Becky's turn to serve food to Mr. Fred, but she needed to use the restroom. So, Felicia decided to help serve the food to their husband. Felicia then poured a portion into the food, after which she took the food to their husband. This portion was to make Mr. Fred see only her. After Mr. Fred finished his food, he called the both wives and asked, "Who made me this delicious meal?" Becky quickly responded, "I did." He thanked her and gave her a gift. To Felicia's surprise, the portion turned Mr. Fred towards Becky. He barely visited her hut nor bought her gifts. He even started calling her Mama Emmanuel. Felicia became pained. She was furious. She devised another means. After Becky finished cooking one faithful day, Felicia entered the kitchen and poisoned the whole pot of food. While at it, her daughter Stella saw her putting a white powder inside the pot of food. It was time for Becky to serve everyone. Felicia quickly told her that she and her kids had eaten. She should only serve their husband and hers. Becky served her husband, put a little for the dog, and took her own. She forgot to bring washing hand water for her husband. As she was going back to the kitchen to get water for washing his hands, she saw the dog lying dead on the floor. She was scared and terrified because the dog was her husband's hunting dog. She then looked closely at its mouth and found out the dog vomited foam before passing out, so she screamed and everyone came out. Mr. Fred quickly asked, "What is the matter, my dearest wife?" She said, "Someone poisoned the dog. I gave it food and entered inside, just to come out to find it dead." Mr. Fred summoned everyone and started asking questions. Felicia pretended not to know until the atmosphere got intense, and he said he was going to summon the chief priest of the land, but no one said a word. So he sent for the chief priest. The chief priest immediately told them if the guilty person doesn't confess, she will be stroked dead. Immediately, Stella spoke up. In fear of losing her mother, "I saw my mother put a white powder inside the pot of food Auntie Becky made." Everyone was surprised, including Felicia, as she didn't know anyone saw her do it. She accepted it, saying, "I didn't know it was a potion to kill. I only put it there so that my husband can start loving me more." She cried bitterly, but those tears weren't real. The chief priest left. Her husband told her to leave the house immediately. He told her to leave quietly. He didn't want to embarrass her in any way, nor drag the villagers into the matter. While she was leaving, her both kids refused going along with her, so Emmanuel and Stella stayed back with their father and Becky. Becky continued being nice and taking care of them. She helped Stella braid her hair and also assisted them in their assignments. But everything changed when Becky gave birth to her daughter. She started maltreating them. She constantly called them children of a witch. She made her hatred for them known. Not until one fateful afternoon, news reached Becky that her husband was involved in an accident and died at the spot. Felicia, the first wife, was asked to return to her husband's home since she has a son, and the reason for her leaving her home wasn't known by anyone except her husband and Becky. Becky wasn't ready to state the reason either, because a promise was made the day of the incident that no one was to mention why Felicia left. The moment Felicia returned, Becky packed her things and left with her daughter. But Felicia never forgave her daughter Stella. When Felicia returned, her kids were scared of her, but she wasn't moved. She was already practicing evil witchcraft. All she had to do was to summon them inside a bowl and turn their hearts towards her. As the kids grew up, the son Emmanuel became a successful engineer who strongly believed in God, whereas her daughter got married but wasn't doing well. As every business she tried to do didn't work, Felicia, her mother, was head-bent on dealing with her for what she did as a child. Stella gave birth to 2 boys, Kelvin and Caleb. The kids had a bright destiny. They were excelling in their studies and doing great. One day Stella took her kids home to see her mother. She was so excited to see them, she offered them snacks which they ate. Months passed and everything changed. The kids who were bright at school started dropping in school. They lost self-confidence. They were always looking sick. Stella couldn't understand what was going on, so she quickly traveled back home and told her mother what was happening. Her mother told her not to worry. I will pray for you. Give me some money so I can buy things for the children. I will send some things to the children in my ministry and will ask them to also join me in prayers for my daughter's family. You know God listens to the prayers of children, she said, looking at Stella with fake concern on her face. Stella did as her mother told her, believing her mother was going to church and believing that she was going to oblige to what she said. But instead, her mother, Felicia, used the money to make a goat, which she sacrificed to her gods, thanking it for causing problems in Stella's home and asking it to keep on doing more. Stella's home had reached the peak of its problems. Her husband was about to lose his job. He was the only person providing for their home. Her children, on the other hand, were getting unnecessarily sick, having to miss school. She didn't know what to do. She ran back to her mother Felicia, crying and begging her to intercede. Her mother told her not to worry. Everything would be okay. She told her to eat and rest and also mentioned taking her to her church for deliverance the next day. It was late and Stella couldn't go home, so she slept at her mother's place. While she was sleeping, she could hear noises in the background, laughing and chanting. She was scared at first because it was just she and her mother in the house. So she decided to open one of her eyes but didn't stand up. She was surprised to see her mother dressed in a white wrapper and having communication with some spiritual people. One turned and said, "Hope she's asleep." And Felicia said, "Yes, deep asleep." Felicia then said, "She's yet to finish paying for her sins. She must suffer the way she made me suffer." They all laughed loud, "Ah ha ha ha." Stella was seriously sweating where she was lying down. She couldn't believe her ears. She turned to stretch her body a bit. She then noticed her mother was on the bed. That was when it occurred to her that this was a spiritual gathering. She quickly turned her mother's body around. While doing this, she said, "I have forgiven you for hurting my home, but it is time to take everything back." After the spiritual meeting, Felicia couldn't return to her body. She was trapped in the underworld. She cried her eyes out. That's when she knew Stella must have woken up and seen them. Felicia couldn't return to her body anymore. The next morning, Stella called her brother Emmanuel and asked him to return to the village immediately, stating, "Their mother is dead." He left everything he was doing and came back to the village. When he returned, Stella told him all that had happened that night and how she died. Emmanuel, on hearing this, decided to burn the house and her body so that their mother won't ever return to her body. The moment they were done burning the house and body, they felt a strange way. The spell Felicia, their mother, casted on them when she returned back home after their father's death broke and they became free again. Moral lesson: Felicia's envy towards Becky leads her to commit harmful acts, causing suffering for herself and her family. Additionally, the story highlights the importance of forgiveness and redemption, as Stella's decision to confront her mother's wrongdoing ultimately leads to the breaking of a dark spell and the restoration of peace for the family. Overall, The story serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of jealousy and the healing power of forgiveness. Please like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on the notification bell to get more interesting stories like this.